Hey guys, happy Friday. And this week is now at a close after today. It's a lovely day outside, and here we are inside, preparing to do, art. For those of you who follow me to work with me, I'm about to head over to the May line and work there. And you can just kind of hang with me if you're not, and that'll be cool. And we'll get to actually working today on military ranks, which is something that Brent and I had started on yesterday, and Donald and I. So Brent, Donald, and I were all working on military ranks. So we're going to continue working on that today. Kind of come up with a structure. Good morning, Donald. You're part of the show today as we work on military ranks and stuff like that. So we're going to move over to the main line real quick, though, because we should warm up. We should always warm up. So we're going to head on over there for a moment. And we're going to... Okay. Here I am at the main line. I'm just going to take a normal pencil here, just an average normal pencil. And as I've said before, I use a scale, which is usually used for architects. But I love them because they're easy to pick up. They make it easy for me to do my straight edges. So I prefer to use scales for this. So that's all right. We're just going to draw ourselves a couple of straight lines. And I know a lot of people are like, well, gosh, this is awfully boring. We've been doing the same thing for a long time. And it is hard, but a lot of things are won by repetition. Hard work comes by repetition a lot of times. And I know that makes this kind of repetitive. And it, by nature, means that we're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over. But it's good for us. Practice makes perfect. And what I have right here is just a normal French curve. That was probably not the wisest move, but that's okay. That's okay. Okay, guys, we're just going to use a 0.4 standard pen, and we're going to then draw on these lines. I'm going to start here. Make sure your elbow is off the table. Make sure your wrist is off the table. I'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4. The goal is not to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect anytime, ever. We're humans. So there's no point in attempting to be perfect on this. This is a warm-up. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Same here. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Now with these three right here, the goal behind this is to leave the departure point and look to your destination while drawing. So you want your eyes over here while you're drawing. You don't want to be looking at your pen. This is practicing trying to hit your destination. Right? So you start here and you look here. You start here and you look here. And you can see it's never going to be perfect right off the bat. You'll get better as time goes on, so that's not a problem. And we're going to try to trace these curves and trace these curves. We're trying to stabilize this so that we can get it to work. And it is the 11th, Do you need me to stop my show to help you? Then stop. And then we will move back over here to the main table. That's actually a good question, my friend. Usually, I think we should always pull. And that's not a bad question at all. And now I'm kind of questioning myself. Why is it that I go from bottom to top and not top to bottom? So this may be a short show. I'm hearing a lot of grunting over here from my child, and I think he might need help. So if he needs help, I'll have to quit the show. But we'll see what's happening over here. Sorry about that. To answer your question, I actually really do not know why I usually say we should pull. So we should pull the pin instead of push the pin. Though, in the case of those lines, I think the reason is because I'm comfortably going from left to right, which is the nature of those of us that right? No, he seems to be having a problem playing music on YouTube with headphones on. And what I have told him was if he needs me to quit my show to help him with that, that's something we can do. But the truth of the matter is that he could probably just suffer the next 2 hours without music and continue to do his schoolwork. So that's what he probably needs to do. That's the choice he needs to make. So anyway, I think the reason is because, turned this way, I'm pulling the way we would write. And I'm only doing that because our culture writes left to right. So I think that's all just instinct. So I think you're probably right. I should pull next time. So I'll try pulling and seeing if that does something better. So, and I appreciate that you guys are both being willing to be patient for this, for the kiddo. But the truth is, he needs to just work in silence for a little while. So, let's go ahead and switch to the monitor. So, I've been working on the military ranks since yesterday. I was struggling with it. I looked up a ton of information on the history of ranks. And the more I looked into it, the sillier it got. Not that there's anything silly about military ranks, but so you end up with weird things like the word lieutenant. And the reason why lieutenant is spelled that way is it's in lieu of the tenant who exists there, which would be the captain, right? So if you're a captain, and the captain comes from capitan, which is the lord or ground, all this like weird stuff. The person who is in charge of things. And so what I think will happen is we would have, if you were to take, oh yeah, I think that's probably not a bad idea, is to change up which direction we go on that, by the way. I think that's brilliant. So, anyway, I looked up a lot of the ranks and how ranking works and things like that and where the names came from. And what I discovered was that there was an ordinate... Oh, for goodness sakes. I am so sorry, guys. Can you hear me fine here? What if let me turn this up, because I actually see that I am not very loud over here on the board. Why am I not loud on the board? What's going on? I've turned everything up all the way. I even see static coming up. Maybe it's just the microphone needs to be closer to my mouth. I try not to turn the microphone. There we go. It's very directional. I try not to turn the microphone directly at me, because then I take my coffee and go into the microphone, and I feel like that's kind of silly. But we are pumped up all the way on all of my... Oh, there we go. Whoa, whoa, whoa. There. Ooh, that was really loud. Sorry about that, guys. I guess this knob needed to be turned more than I thought. There we go. Better? Better. Okay. Usually I like to put my volume so that I can see it on my monitor over here. Anyway, so back to the thing I know the best is martial arts ranks. And I thought, you have all of these things where you had the ability to reset the system and completely start all over again. And so what would you do if you did that? Somebody might say, what's the oldest rank structure that was continuous all the way through to the end of the earth? And all of the rank structures that we were talking about yesterday was set up in a way that made sense if you look at it from Athens to Rome, to the constellation of Rome, to that kind of structure. And though that's not a problem, it's got a lot of baggage. It's got a lot of baggage. Lieutenant spelled L-I-E-U, instead of L-O-O or something like that. I mean, and sergeant is got a serious number of vowels in there that don't make any sense. Colonel is not spelled. It's spelled colonial. And you know what I mean? It's like there's a bunch of weird words that are taken from down the road. And Brent and I were talking about the concepts here. And I think, they could formalize the idea that you can't just enter into the military at first lieutenant and just start there and never had any practice in the military at all. That's one thing. The other thing is that you could jump, I think, would be a reasonable thing. So I've come up with the idea that it's the first 5 ranks of joining the military everybody does. At the 6th rank, you can petition for a commission from the government. And the government would give you a commission to, if you go to the spacer school, then you would get a commission from the government to be a leader in the military, whatever you want to call it. And this is very similar to what happens in martial arts. You make it up to 6th Q, and you can't test at all prior to 6th Q. There's no way. You can't petition at all. But at 6th Q, you can make a case for it. You know what I mean? And usually, a lot of people get moved to black belt at about 8th Q or 9th Q. Somewhere in there, and then they get to black belt. But you can petition as early as 6th Q if you're really good, So I figure that my thought is the first 5 ranks would be just learning how to be a space soldier, so to speak. This is the right end of the gun. Please don't shoot yourself. Don't step on that electrical wire. If you don't have your spacesuit on, you will die in space horribly. So wear your spacesuit. That kind of stuff. If at 6th Q you're really driven, you really want to be an officer, you can move up to the officer ranks. but you have to go through space school and stuff like that. So you'd end up with like people who are 6th Q would be in officer school. They would be really young, and you'd be like, what are you doing here? Most people in officer school would be higher up. But then you'd also still have sort of that cul-de-sac that we were talking about before, where you end up at 10th Q, and you're just kind of there, and you're just, you don't want to leave, but on the same token, you don't want to be an officer. So once you get commissioned, and actually the commissioning part makes total sense. Right. Well, and I don't think, from talking to you guys yesterday, I don't think that the internal, like, what do I want to call it, crunchiness, I can't really figure out what the word is, but like, I feel like you guys would feel like it was still the same design, because both of you guys both sort of were in the, look, this is the most efficient way to do this. We've had hundreds of years of practice, trimming the fat. So I feel like you'd still have things like, people are third dan, which would be a whatever we want to call it, and we'll come up with that today. Would we want to call them lieutenants, or lieutenant commander? The lieutenant commander is in charge of the ship, but there's a commander on board, but the lieutenant commander is in charge of the commander because the lieutenant commander is the one in line. So I feel like that would be something you'd still see. Your counselor might be a commander, but you're the lieutenant commander and you're in charge of the ship. And so, I feel like you'd still have that kind of stuff, because I think both of you guys were commenting. Right. Yeah. Anybody's called captain, although I had a tradition started in Tamerlan that I'm going to keep. The little boats are always called skippers. The captains of little boats are always called skippers. So Corvette, destroyer, they're skippers. On heavy cruiser, light cruiser, they're called captains, stuff like that. Because I like the idea that you get weird traditions that pop up, and you're like, okay, why? I don't know. We've always done it this way. Because there's some of it that you guys are saying which was the most efficient way, but then there's some things in the military that aren't the most efficient way, but seem to be very individualized. So it's like traditions, weird little traditions, as long as it doesn't slow down the process. You know what I mean? Like, a tradition to do a jig before loading a torpedo would slow down the process. We have to bless all of it, Yeah, that's exactly where I took it from, was skipper's the old school name for a ship captain. And I thought that would be what we would do. It's just the little guys always have skippers, And I actually kind of extended it that the little ships tend to skip about, and so they borrowed the name, and then it also has sort of a double entendre, so that it's got kind of a double meaning. The little ships are always skipping, whereas the big ships jump in to do something. If you're calling in heavy cruisers and light cruisers, something bad's going down here, Whereas the destroyers and corvettes, they're always flying the flag, right? That's their job. They're not here to cause a big fight. They're here to show that we still care. We're the unity. We still care. That's one of the other reasons why we don't have, 40 Marines on board the Corvette, is because you're really just flying the flag. That's really all you're doing. You're going into this area and going, hi, you guys need anything? Replicators, a transporter, do you want anything? Can I get you something at the McDonald's? They're not really there to, that's it, don't do this or I will shoot you, And of course, the reason that I did that is because I feel like that would be the more interesting stories. You're always going to end up with, we jump into the system and they need their fleas and floppin' fixed. So we're down there fixing the fleas and floppin' when we discover that all the dogs run backwards, and now we've got to figure out why. I'm just making up stories. But I felt like that would be a much more interesting part of this. And then if they ever end up in large fleet maneuvers, they're just a cog. They're just one little piece, more likely to be just like, let's run for our lives. Let's get out of here. So, okay. So, big thing that I did with setting up this particular thing is I have set up sort of the idea that, or first of all, I wrote down the 3 academies, which is good, because I didn't actually have those before. So there's that. Now we need to kind of decide how the ranks look, because I want to kind of figure that out. So in the Dawn ranks, I've been kind of thinking that they've got 4 stripes with a dot. So, like, your first rank is just a circle. And then your second rank would be a bar. Right? And then your third rank would be a circle and a bar. You get the idea. Like that. So that's the first 3 ranks. Hey, George. What's up, dude? You want to visit? Okay, we'll put you right here, and I'll give you scritches. So George has come to visit. I think he just wants to be scritched. Good old George. So the idea here is that we're kind of going dot, then bar, then dot bar, and then bar bar? I guess it'd be bar bar. What do you think, George? You think bar bar? Think bar bar sounds good? Think bar bar sound good? George hasn't visited in a while, has he? He's getting bigger, though. You're getting bigger. Are you getting bigger? So, hey, Ian, welcome aboard. We're talking about ranks. It's not very exciting, but we do have George, which, that is kind of exciting in his own weird way. I don't know. There we go. So, here we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to put you down now because I know you well. You're going to just end up walking on my monitor. Little goober. You're a good cat, though. Good to see you, my friend. Good to see you. So, kind of wish I was working on ships today. I was working on deck plans yesterday, but then I got sidetracked by this military thing. Trying to decide what my ranks look like. So, anyway, okay, so then the second rank for this, I'm just going to keep copying and pasting. So, at this point in time, we've got 2 bars, right? Maybe I shouldn't do that. There we go. And then I'm just going to copy these guys down because they'll help every other rank. And we'll see how many ranks we can get out of this. That'd be kind of useful. So, I feel like this one would be... where am I? Here. We'll just put 2 bars in. There we go. like that. And that way we've got 2 bars and 2 barzans. A partridge in a pear tree. All right. So I'm just going to take this guy because he's just 2 bars. And we're going to take that out. And this way we can go like that, and then like that. Oh, hey, yeah, that's the ramen model kit. That's awesome. I still think the ramen model kit's kind of fascinatingly, entertainingly silly. You know what I mean? Like the good kind of silly, not that weird silly, but like one of those. Somebody really was like, you know what we could do? It's just like, but I agree, we should do that. We could do some ships later on, and we could paint up, because I've got a couple of ships that need to be painted up. It's a little cold for me to primer a couple of ships, but yeah, I agree, we should do that. That sounds like a ting. So Ian and I often work together building things. Ian is an amazing modeler, like with physical models and stuff like that. And I always work at 1/7,000th scale or whatever, because I like that. 6, so we're 6 ranks in. I'm actually going to go down here and do this, because I think the easiest way to do this is to go backwards 1. Right? When we do this, then I can just take the top off of that guy. Right. There we go. Better. So, this gives us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ranks so far. And then 8. And then I feel like maybe the last 2 would be so high up that you wouldn't have it wouldn't be that straight up. George, are you on the May line? I see George on the May line. Hey, you. Hey, pest. Hey, pest. You're not looking at me. Do not eat the May line. He likes to chew on the... So a May line is... the desk is called a May line, because I think the company was actually called May line back in the 60s. But a mainline desk has a T-square that is on wires, so that the T-square is always level. You just push it up, and this wire pulls the other side, and so that they're cantilevered. And for some reason, that cat loves to chew on the wire that goes up and over and around. And I'm like, this is from like 1963, so could we not damage it? I'm not sure if I could restring it if it broke. And so I'm kind of like, I have to keep an eye on him so that he will not, in fact, chew on the mainline's wire. So we're going to take this. I guess we could just take this guy and copy him and make him the 4th position. I guess I'll move this guy over here real quick, because I need to move all these guys up. But we'll give him his 1 more stripe. There we go. Excellent. And so we'll, except for him, I'll stick all these together. Except for him, I'll stick all these together. There we go. And then that way I can just take and kind of move. I'll move all of these guys up. There we go. I'm just moving these guys closer together so that we can kind of work this out a little. But I've set up on all of the... Oh, sure. But I also want it to be logical. You know what I mean? I don't want it to be silly. I don't want people to look at my story and then go, boy, he's an idiot. You know? But part of the story and part of the culture of the story is that we lost a lot of humans in the war. And like 90% of them. And so the concept here is that they use the opportunity to restart everything and, you know, analyze and decide, you know, what are we keeping, what are we not keeping, and things like that. And so part of this is that, you know, they did dump a lot of the culture of the military. And a lot of it is because they are interfacing with 6 other alien races, you know, who all joined the Unity. And so, you know, we had the race that called your ranks blurps, blops, and bloops or whatever. And you're like, well, I don't know if I want to call them blurps, blops, and bloops. You're kind of terrifying when you do that. You know that, right? Just saying. Little pest. You want to see what I'm doing, don't you? Please don't push buttons. Don't push buttons. No pushing buttons. So, these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The first 8 ranks here. I went ahead and I would put a line in, but this is Photoshop and you're not allowed to use lines anymore. I'm being bitter. This is actually something that we're having a problem with. And that is, see how up here the box says pixels? If I make a box, it just makes a box. It makes a box even right here and everything like that. However, if I switch to the line tool, it makes it into shape, and pixels is grayed out. You can't do pixels anymore. And every time I add a line, it adds a smart object and does the stroke and the fill. And it's actually a real pain in the butt, because if you do a whole bunch of lines, what you end up with is a zillion layers. All cats are indeed pests. Are indeed pests. Did you hear that? You're being called a pest. Did you know that? You have something stuck in your fur. Goofus. There we go. So that's where we are. I'm going to move this back here. There we go. So these are the Dawn ranks. And I'm trying to wonder, I guess if you were so high up ranking that you were past the 4 stripes level here, would there be... Because that could be a star, you know, 1 star, 2 stars. And I guess we could even have further than that if we really needed to. We could go 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever. That's entirely plausible too. I mean, I was saying that there's 10 ranks, but the truth of the matter is there could be, just like you were saying. Okay. Come here, boy. Come here. There we go. I don't know. Here, let me go full screen. There we go. So, for Alex's sake, here is George. This is George. As in, hug him and squeeze him and call him George. And George likes to visit from time to time. The problem is he actually likes to climb up. This is where my monitor is right here, my drawing monitor. And he likes to climb up on it and then sniff everything over here, which is great for you guys, but kind of disturbing for work over here. So Yep, George is George. He's a good cat, though. Yeah. You're very popular, you know that? You're more popular than me, I think. Well, it's all the young kids these days. They're all popular. So. But he is good. He's a good cat. Hi. Quality. The best show ever is the cat show. It's kind of, I don't know if you can. You hear the computer jungle, George. Did you know that? I don't know if you guys could hear him purring. That was pretty funny. That'd be awesome if you could. But he's pretty happy. You don't have to stick around here. I don't want your butt, though. We gotta go somewhere and do something else besides butt. Oh, the 10-year-old crowd thinks that's hysterical. Anytime we start talking about cat butts, that's hysterical to the 10-year-old crowd. I think he went to the other room to giggle. That makes it funnier. Okay. Thank you. Okay, back to the show. Back to work. So, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ranks in sort of the... Yeah, he was purring. He was purring really loud. I thought for sure that if I put the microphone on his chest, you'd be able to hear it because he was like sitting there rattling. He was purring so loud. He was pretty happy. Pretty happy cat. So, okay. Now I need to figure out what are these last sort of things. And it's conspicuous, too, because only the line tool doesn't have... I've got the only options are... Okay, that's weird. Only the line tool is stuck where I can't change it to pixels. It's only the line tool. It's very conspicuous. And of course, that's the one that I use the most. So, there's that. I'll just go in here real quick. And put my brush on here pretty. We'll go. I don't usually like to hand draw these things, but I just need to make a point. I just need to make it so that I'll remember what I was thinking today. Because this is not an official book or anything like that. It's just my notes so that I can remember what the heck I was thinking about today. Oh. Making it worse every time. How big of stars are we going to make? I think stars are good because it's a space program. And so stars work pretty well. Yeah, he's a pretty happy cat. And I like when earlier today, well, he's actually back right, you can't see him, but he's right here on the stool behind me, hanging, being a cat, doing his thing. He likes to hang out, which is a good thing. The other cat that I have is terrified of the universe, so you never see her. She never comes out. She does nothing but hide, and so it's nice to have one cat that is friendly and wants to talk to people, and stuff. There we go. This will give us the ability to have one more star set if we really need to. I mean, I guess, honestly, that was Photoshop freaking out. Oh, right. Okay. Now, I'd like to do something that is similar on the enlisted non-commissioned side. Do we think just chevrons would work? It does kind of make me wonder, because chevrons seem to be kind of a classic military identifier. And I kind of like the idea of effectively colored chevrons to indicate your rank. It would make for, at least it'd be consistent between both sides, right? If we had a dot and a chevron, and then yeah, because this would be effectively ensign and lieutenant junior grade, lieutenant and captain. No, ensign, lieutenant junior grade, lieutenant. Yeah. I don't know where I'm going with this. I mean, lieutenant commander, commander, captain. Yeah, stars and bars, maybe? Because, I mean, if we were to go with chevrons, let's talk chevrons over here. First, we're going to make a chevron because Photoshop has made life a little bit more complicated than it needs to be. So we'll do this, and then rotate it. Right. We can have ourselves a nice little chevron right here. Just trim it down. I hear trouble. What are you doing? Okay. There. That's totally fine, dude. You do you. But we can match it to some degree over here. What do we think? Would we think that that would be kind of weird? Maybe I should cut it down a little. Because a chevron would be good, I think. We couldn't make a dot, because, of course, a single dot would make you look like you were a commissioned officer. So, but what we could do is invert the chevron. Like you don't have a colored in chevron yet. That might be a thing. Let's try that. Image adjustments. Invert, right? I'll take this guy and we will put a small amount of, oh, what's over here? There. And then I will just make this its own layer for inverted chevrons. Right? So the white chevron is your basic recruit. Right? That makes sense. And then you have a colored in chevron for the I'm not a basic recruit anymore at PFC. Right? Move this down. Kind of fun doing this. Little, little monotonous, but that's okay. There we go. This is going to make my design on the uniform a little bit more difficult because I'm going to have to make it do these and these. That's fair. And that gives us 2 more because there's nothing. Brent's saying that if you are basic, you have no stripes, no rank, nothing. You have to earn it. It's the same thing with Star Trek when we have the very, very raw recruit ensign. They don't have any stripes. And that fits. And then we will take this guy, this guy, this guy. And that will merge him down. And we can move and copy him. Put him here. And give him the bar, or the inverted chevron like that. This makes it, the idea behind this was to make it clear. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ranks in. Once you get to here, this is when you... So the only thing is, I agree completely, but it's 6th rank is when you can start to get 6th rank is where you start to get to the point where you can challenge being an officer or go to, that's the basic. So I kind of want it to be all filled in. So I think what I'm going to do is take this guy out completely, and you don't get, there isn't an empty chevron. So it's kind of like, because this way it feels like they're filling in the stripes to get to the point where they can challenge. So first rank's nothing, and this rank is that, and then you're filling in to here, so to speak, and then to here. So Ian has dropped in the middle of world building, which is really all we're doing here. Is a whole bunch of world building. Sorry, Ian. Because then we can do this guy who is at the 6th rank, right? All of his stripes are filled. And that's when you can challenge moving up. Should we have a different device for once you get to 6th rank. Like, you've completed all of your, effectively your MIDI cruise. You've done your bit for learning the ropes. Some of you guys need to still work on it. You've got 5 more ranks to figure that out. No, I think this will be good. Because a lot of this is going to, if you're wondering why I'm going through so much effort on this, a lot of this will influence the culture. You're enlisted. These guys will be talking about how many stripes you've got. Well, gosh, man, you've got, a whole bunch of stripes in your shoulder there. Have you thought about becoming an officer? No, I don't want to be an officer. Oh, okay. That kind of thing. So I feel like in culture, that might be a thing. Whereas Tilly says that's not a thing. Okay. There we go. We'll copy this. You get to the point where you have a really large device on your arm. And also, there is a reason why we do chevrons that are up and then down, because there's only so much your eyeball can do before you start going, hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, Sergeant, you know what I mean? It takes forever to kind of just read it. So there's kind of a reason why we do the up and then down devices for our chevrons, so that they're easy to read. So I'm trying to think of whether, 6 is a good place to move to the next step. So I'm feeling like maybe we end up with squares above there. So let's try, I'm going to move this guy over here just so that in case I ever need another chevron. I do want it to look different. There's a reason why I'm intentionally kind of going this way. I want it to not be specifically military, U.S. military, or something like that. This looks very Japanese military, except for the stars, where it's starting to look very like a U.S. military thing. So I want it to kind of look like, the entire world all got together, and then they decided what their devices would look like, and some of them were Russian, and some of them were Japanese, and some of them were Chinese, and some of them were Americans, and they all just said, well, we should have stars. No, don't have stars. We should have bars. No, we don't want bar. You know what I mean? You can almost see them discussing that to some degree. So that's where I'm headed with this, if you're kind of wondering where I'm going with this. So we'll do 3 and then a box is what I think I will do. And this guy's got a single box. Right? Like that. And then this guy would have 2 boxes. That sounds silly, but because we're at the 8th rank here of your eighth rank of basic, or whatever you want to call it. Eighth enlisted rank. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then 9. You're here. I'm really wondering why you're still here. You're at 9. been here for a very, very long time, and people are starting to really wonder why you're still enlisted. Cockeyed. Let's not make them cockeyed. There we go. There we go. I think that you guys are right. Most of your people are going to be right in here in this clump right there. That's where most of the folks are. They get up to the point where they've got the little squares on their uniform. They're either cycling out soon or they're moving up to officer. But at some point in time, you don't get down to these bottom ranks. And we will make one more rank out of this. And what I think I will do is not move that because that sucked. Copy it. And we'll move it over here. And I think what we're going to do is I'm going to make a diamond to indicate this last rank. Because they are now I can't actually do lines right now, we will draw a diamond. And the good news is this gives me the ability to add another rank if I need to. Sharpening it up. There's a number of ways to do anything in Photoshop, even when Adobe messes with your system. There we go. Now I think we have all of our ranks for enlisted over here. Turn that guy off. Turn this guy off. And then we'll turn the background off. And we'll merge all these together. Right? And that way I can take this section of the folks. Did we accidentally hide the bars, or what's going on here? I need my resize bars. I need my resize bars, and I don't know where they went. My transform controls are up. Weird. Oh, because we got a selection tool up. Could not transform because it's empty. Whatever. It's weird. There we go. I'm going to reduce this 90% so that we've got space to put the other rank in. Because this guy needs to be down here. He will also need to be reduced 90%. That's good enough. Good enough for government work. All right. There we go. All right. So, we have all of our enlisted ranks over here. And we need to space down because there's no bar at the top. We have our officer ranks. Now, real quickly, everybody who's joining me for the day, We should all stand up real quick and stretch and shake everything out, because otherwise we get stuck. So let's stretch. Oh, pop, pop, pop. Everything pops. We'll walk around a little bit. Ooh. Glad I did this. Like my legs are doing the kind of sitting there too long thing. I know you just ran around, so you don't need to run around more. Go over here. We'll look outside for a minute. Sure is pretty. We didn't get a lot of snow, but we got some snow. Yeah, it's kind of cool. So, there we go. Scratch you on the head. Yeah, you should always scratch the cats and the kids. All right. Okay, so we have all of our ranks in, I think, which is good. We just need to come up with names for them, but that I feel is somewhat of a fight. Because I feel like we're gonna kind of looking at where we are on this. I mean, I'm pretty sure basic is basic, so basic sounds good. I'm just going to write this real quick. That's cool, Donald. Do what you need to do, man. Good old George and George. George being George. So, here's what we've kind of come up with our enlisted side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 actual ranks, and then the 10th rank, or basic. Brent was suggesting that basics shouldn't have a stripe, so that they effectively have to earn their stripes. Centurion is good. I've thought about whether it should go Roman or whether it should go Athenian. And I feel like for the Confederacy that's here, which is called the Confederacy for right now, that one is an Athenian direct democracy. So I think that maybe having them name their ranks in Athenian seems like a thing. Going after Rome would be cool, but it does sort of sound kind of, I don't know, draconian? I don't know. We've used, Star Trek especially has used Rome as sort of these are the bad guys. The Romulans are called Centurions, so it's kind of one of those things. I don't know. So, I feel like if we were to call all of these guys one name, like Sergeant, let's say, it would be in a group. So, so that it's Sergeant. Because, I mean, you think about the way that you have to call people names, right? Yes, Sergeant, no Sergeant, that kind of stuff. Delineation in here probably isn't that big of a deal. Because I'm kind of thinking of this is where I'm kind of having the overlord. And of course that's the next question. If we were to do this as we call one stripe a boodly bop, we just come up with a name. No, that's what we should call everybody's boodly bops. I'm just saying. Do we translate it? We know already, because there's a language here. We know already that there's a different writing style for everything now. There's an actual language here. And so the question I've got is, do we translate it out? So instead of, burp or whatever we call a lieutenant, we call them lieutenants, instead of dinkly, or whatever. And there's like a lot of lieutenants, because there's like lieutenant, like it's close. The Germans were calling them lieutenants, and so were the Irish, oddly. And then, of course, the derivatives of that are lieutenant and stuff like that. And so, lieutenant is, like I said earlier in the show, looking it up, was in lieu, like instead of, tenant. So the tenant, the person who's in charge of the area, in lieu of them, you've got your lieutenant, So it's like, that's kind of a interesting history. It gets weirder with major, like major general and major, and why major generals are outranking generals and weird things like that. Like all of this stuff has some logic behind what was happening on the battlefield at the time. So looking into the history of this was an intriguing thing. So that's the thing. So anyway, but I feel like if we're going to call anybody anything, these first 6 ranks, or I guess the first 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to this line, would be something specific. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right there. Right? Those, because before this line, you cannot, by the rules, you can't petition to move up to officer. You have to take these. Every soldier in the entire fleet will have had these same 5 ranks somewhere along the line. And in fact, I kind of like the idea that, Bob Smith over there is the only cadet who ever left in 5th Q to become a, then he becomes the James Kirk. James Kirk, the youngest person to ever become captain or whatever. You get that sort of effect. You can have that broke the rule function in there, built in, without having to actually fight that function. But these guys, private first class, private second class, private third class, or whatever, we can name them all privates. And a flare like trapezoid, octagon, decahedron. Triangular one. Triangular one, come here. First triangular. First square. I'm only laughing because it sounds ridiculous when you're not serious. But it's like anything. I mean, if you were to translate those names back out, they would sound ridiculous too. Person in charge of the person who's not here right now, come here. That's true. These could be centurions. We could do that. What would we call the guys who are not, who are still learning the ropes? They're rookies. But it's like rookie first class, rookie second class. What do we call the rookies that isn't rookie? So I'm open to any options at this point in time. These guys could. I'll put centurion down for temporarily. I still feel like we'd you just think they're private. And we could probably even have 2 groups so that it was like PFC and PSC, right? Or the other way around, probably the other way around. P private, just private, and then PFC. And then corporal, there's like you could have a corporal. I wonder what the deca octa tri poly. Ooh. You know what? I actually kind of like that, because you could have, well, maybe not here, but Centurion Deca, you know, Corporal. Yeah. I don't know why I am so enamored with Lance Corporal. It's probably because it's the only rank that the Marines have that nobody else really uses, and so it's such a cool. You know, it seems like a thing. And you could almost like call this a decascent, like decadent. You know, an octocent. And then tricent. Trapacent. Ooh. And then probably not call it dicent. Well, I guess you could, right? Because he's a dicent guy. Although I probably would call this guy dicent and this guy tricent, only because you've got 2 and 3, right? And it's all right. That seems to be good enough. You could then do trapacent there, and decascent there, and then this is just centurion. Because octocent just seemed like it was it seems clear that that's 8, and there's no 8. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This guy could be octocent. Oh, he became dicent here. Now I've made a mess. I can't read what I'm doing here. So this is centurion. And this guy, what did I want to call him? Trapacent. Alright, so 2 ranks in is trapacent. 3 ranks in is dicent. Yeah, see, I think that's where I'm having a problem too. Centurion does mean that he's in charge of 100 men. So there is kind of a problem there. That's exactly what centurion meant. Well, let's look it up. You know, we've got as my buddy James says, we have the sum of human knowledge here, right? Let's look at the history of military ranks. So, looking at this here, the Athenians used to annually elect 10 individuals to the rank of strategos, one for each of the 10 tribes that have been created with the founding of the democracy. Strategos literally means army leader. So it is generally translated as general. They had warlords under them who were called polemarches. But over time, that was just absorbed into the strategos. The 10 generals were equal, however, and they had a democracy, to decide what they were going to do. Huh. They devised their battle plans by majority vote. These guys adhered to democracy. Subordinate to the top general was the taxiarchos, which is something closer to a brigadier. Sparta, however, the title was Polmarch for those guys. Below this was the Matarchus? Leader of the regiments. Syntagma. That's what they were called, Syntagma. That would be like a colonel. And then below them was Marchus, the commanding officer of a tagma, which is close to a battalion, which is close to a Roman legion. And then there was the Lakagos, which was an officer who led an infantry, called a Lakos, that consisted of roughly 100 men. So now we're down to 100 men, which would be a centurion. So these are all officers. Centurion would have been an officer, because it's a modern company, which is led by a captain. The cavalry was commanded by an epihipparch. I just like the name epihipparch. I'm just saying. The rank and file of the military of most of the Greek city-states was composed of ordinary citizens called hoplites. So there's no sub-ranks inside they were just hoplonks, unless you were a drill instructor, where you'd be called hoplomachos. You're very macho. Interesting. So, once Alexander the Great came along, the Greek military became professional. Tactics became more sophisticated, and additional levels of ranking developed. Foot soldiers were organized into the heavy infantry phalanxes. These were among the first troops to ever be drilled, and they fought packed in close rectangular formation, typically 8 men deep, with a leader at the head of each column. A tetrarch was a unit of 4 files, and a tetrarchies, or a tetrarchia, were the ranks of 4 files, and the tetrarch was the commander of 4 files. A dilochia was a double file, and dilochites was a double file leader. A lochos was a single file, and a lochagos was a file leader. If you had a Dimoria, that was half of a file, and Dimorites were half a file leader. Another name for the half a file was hemilochion, which would make sense because hemi is half, and hemilochiites being half a leader. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Different types of units were divided differently, and therefore the leaders had different titles. Under a numbering system by tens, a decus was a unit of 10 led by a decarchos. There we go. And a hecatontarchia was a unit of 100. Fascinating. And of course, the kiliostais was a unit of 1,000. So what if we used hoplite ranks down here? What do we think? Because we could use, it just makes for a good name. Also, I kind of feel like, if you're going to, I don't know, either we go with no nostalgia or we go with nostalgia, I guess. Or maybe, I guess you could have a mix of both. We are humans. Hoplites were infantry with spears. Yes. Because if you have infantry without spears, you kind of just pretty much have people who brawl. I mean, I'm just saying. Which is not to say that that's not what a lot of these guys probably do. Probably brawl a lot. So let's not. I'm not getting rid of the idea of a centurion. Might be centurions up here. But what if we started with the smallest unit? Okay, so if we went with a half file and did not writing in black, Dimoris, which would be the half file leader, right, in charge of half of a file. And then oh, I see what you're saying. Right, swords, pikes, or halberds. Well, as it's reading over here, the hoplites were just everybody who wasn't in charge. You know, and then later Greece formed up, and when they did, they got the enlisted ranks, which came in. So, double file. Dilochia. I'm just writing these down temporarily. That's what I was thinking. Centurion could be the this one here. Right? Dimoriites, half leader. So Dilucia was a double file. And a tetrarch. Right. And then this is Decus. And this is a Keeler arc. Now we can probably work on straightening these out so that you don't have we can clean them up so that you know, do we call this guy Dymo and this guy Dilo and then Tetra and then Deca and then Keela, you know, yes Keela, no Keela, you know. Okay, let's look at our like upper level on this too, because we've got centurions. So the formalized ranks with Roman legions by Marius. You know, if you're a Roman writer and your name is Vegetus, just saying. Political office. So military command, properly so called, was a political office in Rome. The commander needed to be equipped with an imperium. Okay, well, we don't have to worry about that. But it does mean that the upper ones are praetors or consuls. Look at this as a proxy envoy. Immediately beneath the commander were 6 military tribunes. My phone now tells me it's a spam risk. I love this. That's literally what it says. That's so awesome. So if in modern divisions, the deputy commander is a brigadier general. The Latoclavian Gluteus Maximus. I think that'd be a great Roman name. That would be my name if I was in Rome. It would be my name. I would totally be Gluteus Maximus. So we can start up here and then call. By the way, once we come up with all of these things, I kind of like Latoclavian. Right? That's cool. Major, lieutenant colonel, and colonel were tribuni, or tribuni. Each than 2 centuries, rather than a small company in modern terms, 60 to 160 people. Each century was led by a centurion, which translates to captain, was assisted by a number of junior officers, such as Optio, which kind of makes me think that centurion should be up here, right? I mean, like, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe in the 5th rank. Right there. That's what I'm thinking. And then we'll have Optio here. Who assisted a number of junior, assisted by such as an Optio. Centurions were broken down to 10 contubernia of 8 soldiers each. The ranks of centurions in the individual cohorts were Pilus Prior, Pilus Posterior, Principus Prior, Principus Posterior. I think anytime we just bring up posterior, all of our inner 8-year-olds are going to giggle. I'm just saying. Because these are obviously upper and lower Pilus, and Principus, and Hastatus. Which means that we could do Princeps. You know what? As much as I'm liking where we're going with this, I feel like this would just be too difficult. You know what I mean? I feel like we would just end up with a mess. You know what I mean? 'Cause it's going to be hard to sell this as a it's going to be hard to sell this as a story, you know. I mean, Centurion everybody gets, but, you know, make sure you tell the Latoclavian that we're doing this, you know. It just seems like that'd be just so complicated. Hey, Dilucia, come here. People would think that we're calling them names. You know, like their name is Dilucia. You wouldn't... I don't think we'd read that as ranks. So maybe what we've got is, maybe this is what their ranks really are, but in reality we're going to call them sergeants and stuff like that. Because I feel like Yeah, the more I think about this, the more I think that this is just getting weird. It's just getting weird. I appreciate you guys hanging with me, though, while we think this through. But I feel like these guys should just be sergeants. All right, these are your sergeant ranks. And maybe what you have is first sergeant. Or maybe even reverse. In fact, I think what we'll do is just call this sergeant. And this is first sergeant. Right? And we kind of have this set broken up into two, because we kind of got our corporals and our privates, so privates, corporals, so maybe we can even do the same thing here. And we have like a master sergeant, right? And then these two could be something else. Because these two ranks, you should have already kind of moved on to officer or retired. So these are like your something other than sergeant. Yeah, they're sort of universal, which I guess kind of makes sense, right? I mean, let's see here. I'm looking up here, over here on personnel with no command authority usually bear the titles such as private, airman, aircraftman, or seaman. The United States Marine Corps individuals of all ranks, regardless of command status, may be referred to as Marine. Okay, well, we knew that. So we got corporals. NCO ranks typically include a varying number of grades of sergeant or corporal, or chief petty officer or petty officer. In many navies, the term rating is used to designate specialty, while rank denotes pay grade. Okay. And I think, really, if we look at this, these guys are sort of your NCOs, and these are your enlisted. So I mean, like, they still live in their same cultures in the way that we would have that kind of done. The culture is kind of broken down in this part into that sort of way, which makes me think, should these guys be moved here? And I think so. I think that's what I'm going to do. And I agree, the Navy ranks are sort of... But you know what's going to happen. Here we are at the Military Council of Nicaea, where everybody is, sitting down. All the military people are sitting down and discussing all of these ranks and how we're going to do them. And the Navy guys will be like, hey, all of our navies have the same ranks. And the Army guys are like, well, yeah, but what about us? And so, you know that I mean, that just seems reasonable, that you end up corporal, lance corporal, sergeant, sergeant, sergeant. Now, should the corporals be higher than the sergeants? Sergeants should be higher than corporals. Okay. Ooh, bombardier. We need bombardiers. No, we don't. We don't need bombardiers. So at this lower level, we've got private, gunner, trooper. I feel like we got private, maybe gunner? I don't know. Kind of feel like, what do we have left down there? What do we have left at the lower rank? Specialist? Yeah, probably specialist. because we're already used to that term. There. And that gets all of those guys in, right? Now here's the problem with the Navy ranks. Bombardier General Jar Jar Binks. Right? Bombardier! Misa going to blow stuff up. Oh gosh. I'm going to clean all this up so I don't remember what the heck I was trying to write here. This is good to work this out, because now whenever I do the history of my characters, they lived a life here. Somewhere. Like, everybody lived a life in this section. And maybe they were even corporals for a while, you know. And then once they get into sergeants, you're kind of like, you've stayed too long as an enlisted person. You know, and they start encouraging people to move over here into the officer area, or to cycle out. So what do we think? These look reasonable to you guys? We'll move up here. Now here's where the officers are where things get funky. Yes, these are kind of funky too. But officers' ranks get funky because really most of the militaries all sort of follow the Army-esque rule to some degree. But one of the reasons that I'm redoing all of these ranks and everything like that is mostly because of the captain problem. You know, a captain in the Navy is a completely different critter than the captain in the Army. The captain in the Army is not without some responsibility, certainly, but a captain in the Navy is actually a colonel. So there is sort of rank issues there that cause confusion between the two, and so that's part of the reason why I'm thinking this out. You know, Star Trek uses Navy ranks, and you end up with, even amongst Star Trek, things got very weird. For a while there was Lieutenant JG. We didn't, you know, it was like, was it a Lieutenant JG? Did we have an ensign? Who was going on? What was the story here? You know, how did you know, that was even confusing in Star Trek's world, and seemed to change between the original series and Next Gen. So there's a reason why I'm kind of thinking this through and going, I feel like captain should be the point where you're in charge of the big ships, the heavy cruisers, the light cruisers. Commanders then would be in charge of smaller ships, the light cruisers, the destroyers, the frigates. Lieutenant commanders would be in charge of the very small ships, some destroyers, the corvettes, tenders, things like that. So below that, you'd have just staff who are working administration on the ship. But we need enough room that I can have people. I mean, if we're going to be on the corvette, then we have a lieutenant commander in charge. That's fine. But now I've got to think through, you know, how do I do this? How do I think through enough folks down there? Right? Exactly. A Commodore is really just the guy in charge of a battleship. Well, that's fine, but he's not really in the administration. So, but he moves in as a one-star general, and you've got, well, okay, so there's that. Ensign comes from insignia, and it's the flag bearer, the person who takes up and puts down the flag, which I kind of want to wipe out, and I've got a reason for it. Although I don't think I can get away with that, because I think we all understand ensign's sort of your earliest rank. But in this world, So when you watch Star Trek, your ensigns are like the guys that are cleaning toilets, right? I mean, that's there's like nobody below an ensign in Star Trek. It's almost like they just ignored this entire left side until they got Chief O'Brien. And Chief O'Brien technically is the only person who can clean toilets because he's the only enlisted guy. Everybody else is a commissioned officer in Starfleet. And I guess that, for simplicity, that makes some sense. Being that I'm going to have to draw all of these people and all of these different ranks on all of their shoulders, I can kind of see why, the drive to consolidate everything down to a 10-rank system so that there's only 10 ranks. But it also means, and I'm looking at you, Harry Kim, some people get stuck at ensign forever. Poor Harry Kim. Yeah. I still like the meme that's going around where, Tilly is like sitting there and it's like, here's Tilly, and then Ensign Kim's like, oh, come on. It's like, so, I don't know, I feel like in the Star Trek world, all of these guys fulfill my ensign duty. You know what I mean? But let's talk about this. I mean, below Lieutenant Commander, we have like 3 ranks of officer, right? So that puts the line sort of right here. There's 1, 2, 3. Those 3 ranks are sort of support staff. Let's look at this. Let's talk about this. Battleship, right? Then you have BS, CA, CL, right? That's these guys. You've got kind of these guys. Right? So we could probably draw the line here and give us 4 ranks down below. I don't know. I mean, so I'm looking at this from like a job perspective, right? We've got 4 positions, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 positions here. And then you have command positions, and that's these guys. Then you have administration, which are these guys, right? And I think this guy is what you guys are talking about with what you're talking about with Commodores, right? This is your Commodore, which is basically a glorified general, but it puts him here, and captain, and then commander. You could just write this correctly. You don't have to. Right, and then this is lieutenant commander. And that gives us 4 ranks down below. And these 4 ranks then would be, these are command ranks. This is administration ranks. Right, and then down here, these are department ranks. And that would work. You know what? I'd almost want to concede to the other side and call this one a kernel. And there's a reason for that. Because you'd want to. I feel like that would be. Well, people would be very confused for a little while. But if you knew that that was sort of part of the design, was that the Commodore was a conceit given to the other groups who have kernels, to keep them from. Because I'm thinking, you have ground troops, and you're unifying everything so that everybody's on the same page. Now you've got ground troops that are under a lieutenant commander, right? Which would sound silly. I feel like it would sound silly for a while, but you'd get used to it. Like the Army has a lieutenant commander. The lieutenant commander is in charge of a battalion. Instead of, so that they're all captains, and the captains are captains. So that nobody has a confusion here. Okay, so let's talk about our department ranks. I need one more rank in the department zone. Right? Which, that's fine. I could call this guy a midshipman. Then ensign. Then Lieutenant JG. And then lieutenant. Okay, what do we think, guys? Does this look good? Can we hold these together and say that this works? Because in the department ranks, there, the thought process is these are the people who are running departments in various departments. And that gives you the ability to have a lieutenant who's in charge of a massive department. And, they're classically department ranks. Although, you'd probably also say that this rank is somewhere in between. So the lieutenant commander, and even on the larger ships, even then, commanders would be on the department ranks too. So these kind of have an overlap, like a Venn diagram overlap, right? As a commander, you could be in charge of a destroyer, or maybe just in charge of a battleship's, engineering room. It's a plan. What do you think, Brent? You okay with this? You think this looks solid to you, too? Understanding that the Marines would have the same structure in this story only because probably a civilian, likely a civilian, got in there and said, "That's it, you people, you're all too confusing. We're going to make these all uniform." Oddly. So then they uniform everything across all the ranks, because there's only one military at that time. Cool. Coolio, guys. We've done good work today. And this ends this week really well. Yeah, I know it was kind of boring as far as drawing goes, but as far as world building goes, I think we've settled this in. Should we call them generals or admirals? I think we should call them generals. I know it sounds horrible, but again, you have to concede to that army guy who's sitting over there just yelling about the fact that they're... But what about us? You've used all the Navy ranks. Why won't you use... So I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to call these general. Because I think that the concept is that... And really, I also feel like in the future, you really kind of have one military. And it just has a branch that's ground troops and a branch that's spacers. And they'll even have a branch that's water troops for traveling in the water. But since the environments are going to be so radically different, you could be on day one doing a ground assault on some planet with dust storms, and then on day two be in absolute vacuum as you do a ground assault on a moon. I feel like that uniformity might be a better concept here. So, I think what we're going to do is also then we don't need this guy anymore, because then if we take that out, we can just hit save, and then I'll come back and clean these up later. But at least for now, I know what to draw on my people as far as rank insignia and things like that, so that people can see it. I feel like also they will have colors, because certain races read color, and so all of these will be in color codes too. So there'll be a color code and a black and white code. So I think that'd be interesting as well. So that's cool. And maybe we'll just call this Major General. And there probably is a 3-star version, which is the guy that's in charge of everything. You know, the dude who's in charge of the entire army. You know, or whatever. So, cool. Coolio, guys, we have done it. Our military has been figured out and sort of have... There's probably more of more story to build in as to what it's like to be a military person. But, yeah, I think that works. So you're a private, then you're a specialist, then you're a corporal, then you're a sergeant. So you've got 4 positions, so to speak, in the enlisted. And you just decide whether you're a corporal or lance corporal, or whether you're a specialist or first-class specialist, or private first class. Sergeant, first sergeant, and then master sergeant, which puts you, like, why the heck are you still down here in the enlisted round? Then, when you test in, you come in as a midshipman up there. Midshipman, then that's your midi cruise. You know, you're effectively just kind of hanging out going, okay, now I'm in charge, but I really don't know why. Then it's ensign, where you actually have a job. You know, they actually like let you be in charge of things. Lieutenant, junior grade, lieutenant, either one of those are just lieutenants. And then you have the department, those are department ranks, and then commander, and captain, and then colonel, and then general, and then major general. And that works. And then that's how you get all 20 ranks in, and you have your enlisted and your officers. Cool. We've done good today. I feel like this is good. And now we can put this stuff on people's uniforms. We have to also answer some other questions like, do officer uniforms look different than standard operational uniforms? And that's another thing to think about completely. I mean, do we just give everybody the same uniform and have the rank different on the arms? We'll have to think about that. I'll go look into that over the weekend, and I'll report back to you guys on Monday as to what I find out. Like, because, I mean, right now, obviously, there is a distinction between the two, but I'm noticing that there's a distinction between the two in the Navy. But when you look at, like, the Army and the Marines, everybody's just wearing their BDUs or, you know, whatever's the BDU of this era. You know, they're all wearing fatigues. You know, everybody is. Soldiers that are just the foot soldiers and the officers, and there's a reason for that. You don't want to make it obvious who's the officer, because then the officer gets shot. So, but that's not as big of a deal when you're on a Navy ship, and so it's like, will that be as big of a deal if you're on a spaceship? Yeah. So that's another thing to think about. I'll have to ponder that one. I'll get back to you on Monday on that one. In the meantime, we've done very good today, but it's time for lunch. And I'm hungry. I don't know about you guys, but I'm hungry. So we'll head on out and go to lunch and have a weekend. Oh, by the way, apparently Pepper was getting vaccinated today because he has to have all of his vaccines in order to adopt, which kind of funny. So I don't think that's funny that he does that. I think it's funny that we're not required to do that as parents. That's what I think. there's an awful lot of things that they're making Pepper, hoops that they're making Pepper jump through, which I kind of wish they'd make us regular parents jump through, as non-adoptive parents, because I think that some of these are great. So there's that. And so that's kind of a cool thing. So he's doing that. That's why we couldn't see him today. He's at the doctor right now. So we'll see him next week, and that'll be cool. Ian, I'll be getting in touch with you. Maybe we'll hang out this weekend, or maybe tonight or something. Tonight, usually, Mariah and I watch Discovery and Mandalorian. So we sort of have made this sort of an unofficial, we all kind of sit around and watch the two shows night. I've already seen this week's Discovery twice, so I'm actually going to be seeing it for the third time tonight, which is fine. I liked this episode, so it was all good. Anyway, so maybe tomorrow, though, we can hang. That'd be kind of cool. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me. Everybody have a wonderful lunch. I will see you all Monday. And remember to keep your eyes on the stars.